Hello, everyone. I am Yasmin West here with my husband, Robert West, on behalf of Radio Bob, and we have another exciting interview for you. We are here today with Brent Mattix,
Right.
and he is a full-time educator, teacher, inspiring and teaching our youth. So we're excited to have him here, but he also has a very adventurous life when he's out of the classroom. So, with that, I'll just say welcome, Brent.
Thank you.
Say hello.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And we'll get into the interview. I know Bob has some burning questions he wants to get started.
Well, I don't know if they're burning questions, but we'll start with your introduction from you because you know you best.
Sure, you bet. So, Brent Mattix, and when you say I'm a full-time teacher, that's an understatement. So, I would say that my life and passion is education. I've been in education since 1994. It's when I started coaching. And then I have the privilege of teaching at the same school that I got to attend as a student here at Roseville High School in Roseville, California. And when COVID hit, my wife turned to me at one point and she said, Brent, you need these students as much as they need you. And that is absolutely true. So I was an administrator for 9 years. I miss being in the classroom and just being connected to students. And so, like I said, that's a passion. If I'm not at the high school, then I'm probably in the outdoors. I'm not cleaning my garage, which my wife wants me to do, which ironically, I actually did work on that today. But yes, I love to be an adventurer and no thing too small or too big. And so I'm constantly coming up with plans of how I get outdoors and do something crazy.
So, what pushed you to the outdoors in the first place and when?
Sure. Well, I'm going to go back to 1983, and that's when my family became homeless. So I was 9 years old, and my dad's a contractor. He's a stud. He's been swinging a hammer for over 50 years. My mom finally made him retire at 74 or so. And let me turn my phone off. Sorry, put that on silent. Worse than the students in the classroom. And so back in the 80s, the construction industry went belly up. And my dad had built a speculation home and wasn't able to sell it. And so we lost our home, and we lived out in the El Dorado National Forest right on the edge of a town called Grizzly Flats. Well, the town is not what it is because it's smaller than that. But unfortunately, that all burned down in the Caldor fire here 4 or 5 years ago. And anyway, so yeah, I was fortunate that my parents made it a great adventure. And so my brother, I have a younger brother who's 3 years younger than I am, and we lived in a tent. My mom and dad lived in a tin shed like you put in your backyard for your tools. And that was life for, 5-6 months. And when the snows hit, we were up about 4,000 feet. I think my parents said, well, we better get somewhere a little bit more protected. So we moved into a cabin. I think this cabin had been built originally in the 1800s, late 1800s, and had been remodeled a couple times since. So it did have electricity, although we cooked on a wood stove. And then I always say that we had running water. It ran into the house. It didn't really go out of the house. So the clay plumbing was so old that if you took a shower, you had about 3 or 5 minutes and then the water would back up. Now the toilets worked. So that was our toilet worked. And so I grew up, even when my dad was building homes out by Folsom Lake. Yeah, I'd go to work with him and jump on my motorcycle. And back then it was almost all fields. So even living here in Roseville, most of the town was fields. And so, yeah, I was a typical 80s kid on my bike going out somewhere and getting into trouble along the creek and coming home. Usually after the street lights came on, we'd get back into house. And then, in high school, I had the opportunity to go on a trip to Yosemite National Park my junior year. And Yosemite trip here at Roseville has been running since the late 70s. And I won't say that changed my life, but it definitely was a shaping force. So I already loved the outdoors, but fell in love with Yosemite. And so much so that I became a tour guide of sorts, taking charter buses from Roseville and Rockland, and did a lot of research. And then when I became a teacher here at Roseville, literally the first thing I asked is, "Hey, who's running the trip to Yosemite National Park?" And got a name, went and introduced myself, asked if there was space on the trip as a chaperone, and got laughter and told, how many people we have lined up to be a chaperone. And I told him, "Hey, I'm not looking to cut anybody. I just want to get my name on the list." And a few months later, Rob Mallman came to see me and said, "Hey, are you still interested in being a chaperone?" So my very first year, I got to take that trip over. And 2 years later, I became the leader. So the gentleman who was running it handed it over to me. And so we're still doing that trip. That's kind of one of my babies. And I think just being outdoors, raising my 3 kids to be in the outdoors, I might have burned them out a little bit. My wife and I took a honeymoon for 3 weeks around the Western states. And so, yeah, those are, I guess, little snippets of things I've done to have that passion to be outdoors.
So I want to remind the parents listening to this that there are benefits to having free range children, depending on the range and the amount of freedom that you give them.
Oh, amen. And I just got a quick story to juxtapose my childhood. So when I was 8 years old and my brother was 5 and one of his friends was 5, my dad had a 5-acre lot that he was building a home on out in Loomis. And they had cleared a lot of the brush and they had these big piles of brush. And so my brother's job for the day, my dad handed me a 3-gallon can of diesel fuel, a bunch of old tires, and a blowtorch. And we had to go around and start all those big, huge piles of brush on fire. And oh my gosh, that was one of the best days ever. And so I compare that to when my children were about the same age and my wife and I were backed out cleaning the garage. And, we just live in a suburbia here. And I think we hadn't seen the kids for a couple of minutes. And we both looked at each other and said, "Hey, have you seen the kids? Have you seen the kids?" And, here when I grew up all day, my dad had no idea where we were. Right. And so, so get your kids outdoors, let them run free and wild. That's the best way for them to learn.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I have a confession to make as well. I even though we didn't have huge property where I lived. I lived in the Berkeley Hills, but we were very close to a regional park, so I was a little bit feral myself growing up.
Hey. Well, I'm currently teaching a class here at Roseville High that's called Outdoor Adventure. It's mostly juniors and seniors, and it focuses on hiking, camping, backpacking, archery, fishing, and wilderness survival. And I'll tell you that a lot of these kids that I've had in class don't really have any experience. Even the ones who have experience really don't. We get them outdoors and actually try to have them apply their skills. And there's a lot of growth opportunity for those students, which I love. That's a huge passion to be able to teach that class. And same thing with our scouts. So I've been involved with the scouting organization for almost 20 years now, taking hundreds of youth outdoors. And even in the scout curriculum, as they're learning those skills, it's amazing how many of them need to be out there hands-on to learn how to apply them.
Yeah, once you get the scouting bug as an advisor, it's kind of hard to shake off. So I like you, before high school, got involved with sailing and being on power boats on San Francisco Bay. So this is like 1971, 72. So it's still kind of PT boat, John Wayne kind of cool to be on these really cool fast boats, and knowing that the oldest crew member on board was 18, and there were a couple of adults, but the rest of us were working on the boat. Those were Allison aircraft engines. They were full of gasoline, and we were going 30 miles an hour on the bay. And I was awesome. 6 the first time I went on that thing. And so like you, I got the bug. I said, I'm going to return something. And so I was a scout from 14 to 18. And then up until I was about 35, 36, I did sea scouting. And like you, somebody came along and said, will you work for me? And then I took over their project for 10 years, the obstacle course.
Oh, good for you.
3 times a year. I ran it, I don't know, 16, 17 times a day, 3 days in a row. It's just what I did. But, it's funny when you describe it and they go, well, tell us something really unique about scouting. And my favorite story is I came back with every kid but one. I have some others, and people do just what you did, right? They laugh, but you've been a scout. You've been a scout leader. You understand. I didn't say I lost him. I didn't kill him. I had to have the parents pick him up. But
okay,
it's a beautiful thing to know there was one out of thousands of kids from your background, my background, moving all the time, her background, half a parent kind of thing. Thousands of kids all coming together and kind of learning to work together instead of learning to work separately on their phones or on the internet, and play NPC games, which I do. Right, right. But it is. You've encountered this. Did you come back with every kid?
Well, so I left. I came back with the same number that I left with. I don't know if they were always the same kids, but that was I just had to add them up. And yeah, so far, now I will say, in all sincerity, our troop has been really involved with high adventure camps, and we have been at a couple of camps where there've been fatalities. We happen to be on the lake in Canada on a canoe trip in a big storm and lost a parent and a scout. They're about 3 miles from us. We had a couple of trees drop in camp that night. So that was a very sobering experience. We didn't know that had occurred until we got back to the base camp at that night. When I saw the helicopter in the morning, I knew that was a problem because it was an area like our desolation wilderness here where you don't have aircraft unless there's an emergency. And so, hey, Mother Nature will always win. You definitely have to respect her. I've been humbled many, many times. And even as much as I feel prepared, I was a Cub Scout. I say I wasn't really a scout. I just kind of did it in real life when we were living out in the woods. But as a scout leader, I've done multiple trainings. And so I feel like I should be very, very prepared. That's the motto, right? Be prepared. Right. But I still have times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't bring this. My rock climbing partner and I were on Cathedral Peak in Yosemite National Park. It was August, and it was a summer day, and so I'm thinking, it's nice and warm, and we're up about 700 feet, and we had a hailstorm come from the backside of the mountain, and I mean, it was on us right away, and within, I'd say 30 seconds, I'm starting to shiver. And I was just in a t-shirt and shorts, and I'm going, what the heck was I thinking? And my partner had a little windbreaker, so he threw that on. And after 4 or 5 minutes of just getting pelted, I just kind of pushed into the mountain. It's like getting shot in the back with BBs. And then we had, to start moving. So I yelled up at Matt and said, hey, buddy, we got to move. I got to get some blood flowing. So we had an option of bailing and trying to rappel down 700 feet, which we would have been leaving gear the whole time, and that would have been time consuming. Or we had about 200 feet to climb out. And then we knew that it was a belay state or a rappel station on the backside of the mountain. And so we just started moving. And once we got up to the top, the rain had stopped, the hail had stopped, and sun didn't come out, but at least we were in pretty good shape. And we ended up rappelling off the backside. We connected with another couple, so we were able to tie our ropes together and just do it in one rappel line. And right as I went off, another couple came up to the summit. And so I just said, hey, if you guys want to rappel our lines, go for it. And I got down to the bottom and said, I made the executive decision that I was going to let this couple come down our ropes, which was the right thing to do. Right. And they all kind of looked at me. They knew it was the right thing to do. As soon as I said that, I mean, it's like out of a movie. It was the most biblical storm that I have ever been in, where it was lightning and rain and hail all at the same time. Within less than a minute, we were in 4 inches of water because we were kind of in this cirque, and where we were standing at the bottom of this rappel line, all the water just came came to a point right where we were. And so the couple got down, we pulled our ropes, ended up trying to find some shelter. I say the most intimidating experience I've had in the outdoors. I just kept waiting to get hit by lightning, and we were able to hike out. And then later on, I did some research and found that another set of climbers had been in a similar situation. They had snow, and one of them had succumbed to hypothermia. They bailed down, and there by then there was 3 or 4 inches of snow. And so again, another sobering moment, but I was just kicking myself thinking, I can't believe I didn't bring a windbreaker. And so even when it's nice and sunny outside, you got to be prepared. And so I just have a little pack that I bring with me now when I do a ton of hiking. And so I'll bring a pack just so if I get caught out in the dark or whatever the case may be, I've got some stuff with me.
It's obviously going to be a little bit different now than when I was being a leader. You have cell phones, you have good communication, you have much better SAR, you have EPIRBs. For those of you listening, emergency position indicating beacons. You have all these things you didn't have before. But you're absolutely right about Mother Nature. She never gives up. All you do is learn from nature. That's all you do. My buddy, who we call Outsider, that's his biggest lesson for everybody. You tell people where you're going, tell people how you're going, tell people why you're going.
You got to always tell somebody where you're going.
And so I was thinking about it the other night, and this was like 30 years ago, but I was 21, 22. I had 17 kids on board, a 45-foot boat with a radio and a map. Mm-hmm. And I know we were going up Pinot Point on San Francisco Bay, and I was looking at Vallejo, and all of a sudden I couldn't see Vallejo anymore. Our radar was built in, I don't know, 53 or something like that. I think the radio was probably 5 or 6 years old. And I was going, I know that whole any port in a storm thing, but we leave the channel, we're in 4 feet of water. That ain't going to work.
Right.
So the closest harbor was where Vallejo was. And so I said, hold course. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like that movie, White Squall. All of a sudden it dawned on me what was happening. It was exactly like you were saying. It was winds. It was junk. I couldn't see through it. Everybody was wet, and even the radar was all messed up. I'm going, oh, this is good. I made it through, but you look back on it, you go, man, you let me slide on that.
Yeah.
Really hairy.
Yes.
But that's not enough for you, is it? I mean, you educate.
Well, before we get into that, I just wanted to chime in with we prepare, we prepare as much as we can, but we can't prepare for everything, obviously. Right. And so I think one of the most valuable things and lessons we can take away from this is that we also need to prepare with our minds, right? And the ability to think on our feet when we don't have what we need in our pack, when we thought we thought of every scenario. So obviously that's a demonstration of you being able to get through a situation like that because of your knowledge and passing that on to.
Well, and the mindset is so important, not just, trying to think critically or being creative, but really just having that mindset that I'm going to be successful here. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to quit. And I read a lot of stories about folks that are in outdoor situations, and the survivors are the ones that really have a determination and that mental fortitude. So that's what I take away. That's what I love, to push myself to my limits and keep pressing, because when I'm in a tough situation, I can get back into the well and say, hey, I've been here before, and I know that it's not going to be any fun, but I'm gonna get through this and get out. And so I think that's important for students and young people, and even us older folks, to have those experiences and keep pushing and pushing and pushing, so that we know when we hit something, I've been here before. I'll make it through.
Yeah, we talk about those toolboxes, and you talk probably about pack weight. You're going to own this pack for X number of days. Go practice with your pack. And it was the same thing on the boat. When we left the dock, if we didn't have a boat, we simply didn't have it. You know,
Sure.
you talk about the load that you carry. There's two toolboxes. There's the physical load that you got to carry, and then what Yasmin's alluding to is the benefits that you will gain mentally, emotionally, and
Right.
physically within the toolbox, and the psychological tools that you manage to bring forth in the worst of situations. I mean, I can think of hundreds of times in my life outside of scouting where something went wrong and everybody's standing around me goes, whoa, whoa, what can we do? And I went, I'm going to do this.
Hmm.
You should do this. And they would look at me like, this guy's crazy. He's going to walk 6 miles down the road because there's no fun. Well, what do you do? This is the middle of the night. That's what you do.
Right.
That was then. This is now.
Yeah. Well, and having all those experiences, as an educator, I talk about three-dimensional learning, right? When you learn one thing and then a second thing and then a third thing pops up and you have no experience with it, but you're able to pull from other areas and think outside the box or connect and move forward. And again, I'm back to our youth that, their experience is in the palm of their hands and what they're seeing. And a lot of that's BS because it's people that are fabricating stuff to get likes, to get clicks. And so what they're seeing isn't even real. And then, they're not really experiencing it. So yeah, I am walking advertisement for get outdoors, get moving, and get those experiences on.
And so are we. And we talk about the Zen state of doing it to people, and they think, well, what are you talking about, man? And I go, there's going to be a time when you're standing on that trail, standing near the waterfall, you're standing on something, and you go, this is pretty cool. I'm pretty lucky to be able to do this. We talk to race car drivers who are going 120, 180 miles an hour in a turn with their car with 12 other guys on a half-mile oval, and they will say the same thing that you do when you're on the trail looking at the waterfall. They're never more centered because there's nothing else can be involved in their life. There's just nothing else. And when you're out there, you're in all of it. It sounds like it's an opposite, but it's actually the same because it's the square in which we center ourselves. It's how we find our balance points, or we wouldn't be doing it.
Definitely. Yeah, I have a lot of people that talk to me about my hiking because that's kind of my Zen place. And there's something to it for me when I'm out and just when I'm pacing, I'm at a cadence that helps me think. And so I process through a lot of stuff and just get lost in the forest. And that's how you find yourself.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. And then I was talking to the boss. That's what we'll call him. I was talking to the boss when he mentioned I should talk to you. Something about Mount Rushmore and something about New York. And he goes, no, I think, and this is what he said, because I think this is what he really does. Everything else is a smoke screen. Can you allude to what he is referring to here?
Sure. So, well, and I'll say that outdoors is my true passion, but really it's just adventuring. Yeah. And so I look forward to getting into as many experiences as possible. And I'm open to everything. Literally, if somebody called me up and said, hey, we got a sewer to go clean, if I hadn't done it, I'm in. Like, let's go check it out. And I think because I've been so available and excited about new experiences, then when they come along, I get a lot of opportunities that I won't say other people don't have, but I don't know, I guess something about my personality or something along those lines. And so I know where you're going, but let me give you a quick backstory. I said I teach at the high school that I attended. That's true. The other half of that is I actually got expelled from the school that I teach at. So I was the top student at the school, and I pulled a prank against our rival school, and the prank involved firecrackers. And so I've got some notoriety for having a bunch of firecrackers my senior year, and that cost me my graduation. And so there's some irony because one of my other really big excitements is being a pyrotechnician. And so I've been doing fireworks for the last 13 years and super fortunate to be part of the best fireworks company out there called Pyro Spectaculars. And it was created by a gentleman named Joe Souza, who unfortunately I didn't have the opportunity to meet, but he started the company back in the 80s. And he has 2 boys and a daughter. And his daughter married a gentleman. So his daughter and his son-in-law live nearby. And their children, which are now grown men, are friends with one of the teachers that we hired back when I was an administrator. And so I was talking with Jared at a Christmas party, and he mentioned doing fireworks. And I just said, buddy, you got to get me on a fireworks show.
Why not?
And to the point of harassment, probably because I was evaluating him. And so I just kept bringing it back up. And, and just time out here, I follow what I call the 4 Ps. So you got to be proactive. You got to be persistent, patient, and positive. And if you do those 4 things, I think a lot of magic happens. And so I was fortunate to get on a show at South Lake Tahoe for my first experience. And, there was a lot of others on the show that are like, how'd you get on the show? Because they had been on the show for multiple years. And so I just kept at it with the company. And pretty much being a teacher, I primarily did a 4th of July show and a New Year's Eve show because those were during vacation time. I did have opportunities to do some other special fireworks shows. And then just, again, try to make things happen, being proactive. And so a couple of summers ago, I was able to weasel my way in to a show called the Macy's Fireworks Show in New York City, and didn't realize just how special it was to be on that crew. And not only did I get on the crew, but my son, who it was his 4th overall show that he had done, but he had recently gotten out of the Air Force. And so I said, if you need another set of hands, my son just got out of the Air Force and he's available. And so we were both able to be part of the crew. And again, didn't know how special it was. A lot of these folks on the show were double-digit years. Our barge master for the first year, our leader, Jose, it was his 38th show that he had been doing. And Pyro Spectaculars has done 40 of the 46 Macy's 4th of July shows. And, Jose had done almost all of them. So last year he did his 39th. So I guess he's done all but one. And we went back last year. Last year I had an even more special opportunity. So when I got the phone call inviting us back, which was pretty cool, because then they like you and value what you have going on. And they asked me if I'd like to be part of what they call the bridge crew. And I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I said, yeah, I'm all in. And then found out that we were going to be rigging up the Brooklyn Bridge. And so, out of 46 years, last year was only the 3rd time that they had done the bridge, and got to be part of that. So one of my friends said something to me to the effect of, you realize that fewer people have done fireworks in New York City that have played in the NFL. I thought that was a pretty cool statistic, and it's 100% accurate. And even fewer, I think the boss said that there's probably only been 30 some people who have been up on the bridge that have been able to rig the Brooklyn Bridge. And then, in my mind, when they put me on the crew, I thought, I'm going to be climbing all over the bridge. Well, in reality, I found out that they only had six people that were actually climbing. Everybody else was rigging stuff from the deck and underneath on the catwalk. And I was not one of the 6. And so I won't say devastated, but I was spinning a little bit. So I went up to the guy in charge and said, hey, I know we just met a little while ago, and I've been rock climbing for 30 years. If you need anybody else to climb up on the bridge, I'm your guy. If I got to go buy my own equipment, like whatever it takes, no task too small, too big, I'm your guy. I'll get it done. And by lunchtime, he had me a harness and a helmet. And so I was able to get up on the bridge. So that's just one of, words can't even describe the feelings and just the appreciation and respect I have for having had that experience. So I don't know what I'm at liberty to communicate this year because nothing's official, but yes, I have other opportunities. And then I'll end, I guess, on the fireworks piece. I was able to maybe kind of parlay that experience into being able to go and do the New Year's Eve show on the Space Needle in Seattle. And that was definitely a bucket list motivator for me. And the young man, I say young man, he's in his late 30s, probably, if not early 40s, that's running that show is just world class. And again, I feel super fortunate to have been part of that last New Year's Eve, even though we had fog come in like 4 hours before the show. And so it was hard to see the actual show, but being up on top of the Space Needle when it was being loaded up was just pretty cool.
The scariest stories are sometimes the coolest stories. It's like the smartest people you meet sometimes are your enemies. I mean, it just happens to work out that way once in a while, right? Where you go, whoa, that's really kind of weird. I was, I don't know, 356 feet up in a basket, and I was scared out of my gourd at a refinery. This crane was higher than that, right? Because they had to lift me up there. And I wasn't alone, but I was up there for about a half an hour, and I was scared out of my gourd the whole time. But it had the coolest view of San Francisco Bay I'd ever had, and I'd worked on it for 35 years. Like you, I've actually been on a fireworks barge. So whilst you might have been on the barge, I was on the tugboat pushing you.
Okay.
Which, let me tell you, it's a lot easier with Z Drive and all of this information that you get now and some of the technology you guys have.
Oh, yeah.
Because the guys we have are still using flares. They run around the deck with flares, and you don't run on a boat. So the beauty that you touched on, I don't know if you did on purpose or not, but in both categories, you touched on what we talk about with STEM and racing, and that is generational knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I can't leave this alone enough that you talked about the teachers who are sons and daughters of former teachers and advisors and scout operators. And historically, scouting has always provided some generational knowledge. What other people think, I don't care. Scouting provides generational knowledge, and there's nothing that beats that. And the outdoor adventures is the same way. And then you just said it. All those dudes blowing stuff up, they blow stuff up. They can get blown up.
Right.
There was a serious measure of trust, folks, if you're listening, about letting him get up on the bridge in a harness and start lifting on a rope and clamping something off while you're holding a wrench. You drop that wrench off that bridge, it's 32 feet per second squared on the way down. When I worked theater stages, that was about 26 feet. That's enough to kill somebody.
Oh, sure.
They don't let just anybody up there. So that's a big respect thing. And yeah, it should be pointed out that you're a lucky guy.
They don't close the bridge to pedestrians until the 4th. So yes, you're working above. In fact, everybody's taking pictures of you.
Yeah, because it's cool.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I'll go back to, growing up, I haven't been diagnosed, but I am 100% an ADHD baby. Just
okay, but if it's working for you,
going everywhere all the time at 100 miles an hour, I drove my parents nuts. But probably the best thing for me was growing up on site, a construction site, because my dad would tell me what to do, and of course I wouldn't listen to him. And after you can make a couple of mistakes when you've pounded wood together, and then you have to undo that. Yeah, I think I kind of learned at a younger age that, okay, you better pay attention when people are telling you stuff when they have more experience than you do. And so that's definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate with you and your pop, but you learned a lot from him, even though it might have been a little aggressive every now and then. I admired my pop so much. I wanted to do everything that he did. And I couldn't figure out why. Well, from the age of 2, he was profiting off of me and putting me on stage in some of his productions. So he was in the movie and TV industry in San Francisco in the 70s. He was the guy you watched. He was the producer of most of these shows in ABC Circle Films that you probably saw as a kid growing up in school, and stuff like that. That's what he did. He worked on Dirty Harry. He worked on all these different movies. And then he was the manager of Marine World. And I envied him from day one. And I wanted to be like him. And my mother was horrified, because where she went to school, she was exactly like him. So she was a radio and TV personality, and they had done all this stuff together. But when she became married, she became proper, and she did not want her son in the right. You can see it coming, and I just went, "Oh, look at the girls! Look at the fun! I'm playing ping pong with Phil Collins." Right, right. I get to do something really cool. And the funny thing is, as cool as the fireworks could be for you, standing on the deck of the barge, coming in after the show, knowing all these people really had a good time watching it. The high is incredible. You'll probably make nothing. You get back and you'll go on a camping trip, and that sometimes will be more important than the event you did with the fireworks thing, because you look at the eyes of the kids and you go, wow, how satisfying does it get to return?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, fireworks are a ton of hard work. So, the New York show is like 12 days of setup, 28 minutes of shooting the show, and then a hellacious cleanup. And I have a picture. I'm with both my sons. My younger son flew out the first year we were there, and he was just there a few days, but he helped with the cleanup. And we have a picture, and we're just, covered in rust and dirt and grime, and it's fantastic. You're so tired, but it's a rewarding tired. And like you said, you made a lot of people happy, and ultimately it's just fun adventure.
I did just really quick. I did a 10-day tugboat trip from LA to San Francisco Bay. So offshore tug, and the darn thing wouldn't go over 8 knots on a good day. Right. And so you're coming around Point Concepcion, which is running 8 knots. So you're really not going very fast. So it takes a long time in the old tugboat to get up there. People would say, why would you do this? But when I got back, she didn't even recognize me. This was this bearded guy who'd been sleeping on an oily deck because I was so sick. I didn't want to leave the engine room. That's what they asked me to go. Keep an eye on the engines. So I didn't leave the engine room for like 3 days. I was so sick I didn't eat. But when I finally, got off the boat, was walking towards her, she could smell me from like 12 feet away. And I'm like, why are you looking at me like that? I thought we loved each other. And she's like, I'm going to kill you. Don't do that again.
Yeah. Probably a lot of diesel fuel fumes down there too.
I know they've racked my brain out. That's why we do this radio station. And before we close, let me bring you back to that a little bit and tell you one last thing you can say for us is really helpful, but we share these stories to help other people get out. We share these stories to provide everybody with options. We don't tell people what to think. We don't do any of that. So we use these clips to help others. And even the clips about where you are doing fireworks kind of thing, give us 15 minutes of Zoom or 5 minutes of audio. We don't even have to talk to you. Just tell us what you're doing and the view that you're looking at, and how you help somebody, or a story that's helpful to others, reminding them to check their harness, their hard hat, their boots, whatever, what to put in a pack. Those are all they're helpful things to everybody, because what they tell us is, I'm like you, I go camping. I'm like you, I go racing. I'm like you, I've watched fireworks, but I'm like you, I've actually watched guys blow them up from 40 feet away from me. And so I really appreciate that part of you. But I've been a scout leader too. And I know the benefits that can be had within the program, especially the more people participate.
That's the key right there. And, we just did a staff camp out last Saturday, and we only had 12 people that joined us, which, you've got to celebrate who's there. Whether it's 5 or 500, you celebrate the people that show up. And so when I made the pitch to the staff about going camping, there was a little bit of nervous laughter, because I'm a big personality and I can overwhelm people, but I have all these crazy stories, and folks think there's no way I can go do that. And what I let them know is, hey, when we're doing an adventure together, you get to be part of building it. And I'm going to push you to get outside your comfort zone into that challenge zone. But at the same time, we're going to celebrate where you are. And, we have students that we take on these trips that haven't been outdoors at all. It's going to be a lot different than if we're doing a high adventure where we're taking 6 scouts who have done, maybe 10 shakedowns to prepare for flying into the outback and doing a 10-day canoe trip. And the key is get out there and start where you're comfortable, but you got to keep pushing. One of the other passions that I have, that's kind of connected to the fireworks is road trips. And so the last couple of summers, I've been able to road trip back to New York. And uh, and as much as I don't like technology, I kind of vlog on Facebook, and I have a lot of my friends and family that say, "Hey, we really appreciate kind of you pulling us along on the trip," and I take a lot of pride in that, and so I'm trying to get out as much information I can to help inspire them. But if you're that type of person, when you're watching other people on social media or YouTube or whatever the case may be, put yourself into the frame. Put yourself into the picture. Get your feet on the trail. Get your hands on the steering wheel. Or get your head on a pillow at a nice hotel at the end of the day where you've been getting outside. But you got to get out there and do it for sure.
You were talking about New York City and driving around there. So really quick, I was working for an international wastewater company, and we would get phone calls all the time from certain cities saying, "Hey, can you come and work on our system, or can you come and tell us what you think?" And we would be like, "Okay, well, we would judge what the worthiness of going there would be, what the likelihood of the sale would be." And I got a call from the city of Poughkeepsie, and if people don't know where that is, it's kind of off the Hudson near New York City, and it's a small little burb out in the middle of nowhere. And they called me up and they were talking about what they had, and they sent me some photos, which at the time were rather harsh, not like we have now, because this was 15 odd years ago. And so I was looking it up and I noticed that it was on the Post Road, which ran from Albany to New York. And somehow I magically couldn't find a flight from San Francisco to New York. Now, how can that possibly happen? But I did find one that went to Albany, allowing me to rent a car. So I got to drive the Post Road from Albany to New York, and people were like, "What the heck is he talking about?" Well, it's the oldest road in the United States. It's a toll road, and they haven't changed it. It's a 2-lane junker all the way. You got to pay attention, but it goes by like Franklin Roosevelt's house and some famous food academies and a couple of universities. There's some battlefields that you can check out. And they were filming a movie there when I went by, so I got to watch them film a movie. Point being is you're in these cool places and you don't even realize you're standing on history.
Right.
Standing at the oldest piece of history in the United States that could be accounted for was that road.
That's
very really cool. Why not? And my boss saw through that before I even flew. That man peed me off so bad because I went in there like the day before and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "You've been looking at the Post Road, haven't you?" He goes, "I heard you talking to so-and-so." And I go, he goes, "Go ahead, it's all right." I was like, "Thanks, man," because I took an extra day on both sides.
That's kind of ties into another lesson learned for me. My best friend Jerry and I, when we were sophomores in high school, we're sitting around at lunch, and whatever reason, we decided, hey, we need to take a trip around the United States. And that stuck in our head. And when we were 21, we got to take a trip around the United States. And our only plan was to go to Las Vegas and take a left. And then I wanted to climb the Empire State Building steps. That's the only thing we had.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We went and we picked up AAA guidebooks. So we had all the guidebooks for all the states. And as we were driving, we're leafing through them and trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And so we put on 11,500 miles in 35 days, had a hell of a time. At the same time, we did a lot of driving and we're kind of a little aimless. And now, I spend so many hours researching. I have people that watch my trip go, "How do you find all these crazy places and things?" And it's really because
tell us about them. We want pictures. We want to know. I'll tell you what, I will give you a code. I am not kidding you right now. So you're laughing. I will give you 2 codes. And you can live broadcast anytime you want from any one of those locations.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, we'll set it up.
Because no problem. You can have it. If I can't trust you, what's wrong with the planet, right? But what you're talking about, it has to be done once in a while. People have a hard time dealing with adversity. And they don't understand why they have a hard time dealing with adversity. And the reason is, A, you don't put yourself out there to have a positive win. An occasional failure, a second place, a third place. We always donate at the races, and when we donate money, it's always some third place winner or the last place guy. The guy that got knocked out first, we give him the money.
That's awesome.
But you got to put yourself out there. Now, we're not suggesting that you put yourself out there on the edge of the cliff and start taking
Right.
selfies. I think you need to work up to that. For the benefit of our audio listeners, we're talking to somebody who's in reasonably good shape. He's well, probably a little younger than me, probably not by much. Maybe we're the same age. I am not in good shape. I was. I want to be again. It won't happen. But you are, so you're ready to put yourself in situations these people wouldn't. But if you start slow, if you start, just leave your house, find out where the local park is, then try the library. If the library's not safe, try something else, right? But find something.
And
Roadie
you
mountain
go to
bikers.
Chat GPT and say, I like this, and this. So this summer, I'm going to Isle Royale National Park. It's an island in Lake Superior, and I'm a hike across it. And so I was just putting some stuff because I was trying to think, do I want to go from east to west or west to east? And so I put stuff in, and I could not believe what Chat GPT kicked back to me. And it's like, hey, I'll give you a itinerary for per day. I'm just doing it in 2 days. So that was part of my question is, with the ferry times and et cetera. And it's almost like talking to a person because Chat GPT comes back and says, oh, that's an excellent solution to ferry times. It was building off what I had thrown in. And so, I teach my students, they have to plan a road trip around the United States, which doesn't have to be, it has to be at least 5 states. So it can be, fairly local. But I said, now don't let Chat GPT do all the work. But if you want to put in, I want to go to off the grid outdoor experiences, or I want to put in I really like Mexican food that's spicy, or I want to dance all night long, it'll just throw out all these different options. Or just putting in a city. We were in, my son and I were in Helena, Montana, and kind of had an extra day there. And I really ran up that way because one of my friends said, hey, that's where I grew up. That's where I was born. And I said, well, what's the best thing to do? So he threw a couple things, and I just put in top 10 things to do in Helena. And out of the top 10, I think we did 6 of them, and got to travel some of the ways that Lewis and Clark did. And I mean, so there's a lot to explore, and I'll throw one more thing out at you. As you can tell, I talk a lot. And so when I'm on the trail, I meet people, I want to know about them. And I was hiking with a gentleman from Kansas, and I said, oh my God, my wife and I spent a week in Kansas when our kids were little. And she looked at me when I told her we were going to spend a week in Kansas and said, what's in Kansas? And I said, oh my, and I started throwing out all this stuff. And so I started telling this gentleman some of the things I had done in Kansas. And he said, I've lived my whole life. He was probably in his early 60s. He said, I haven't been to half the places that you just talked about. And so, even just where you are local, look around, there's amazing things out there.
Yeah, we hide stuff. Believe me, I know California really well. I used to rappel in Bear Valley. I learned to rappel on the side of a building. It was a drunken affair, but I lived through it, and it trained me enough to go to Bear Valley and do a little bit of work, but not Yosemite. The guy who trained me, he was a Yosemite climber. His brother was a Yosemite guide for 25 years there. And we love to hear about it. We've even tried to contact the climbing school to see if they'd share some stories or information with us. So before you go,
stories. You gotta get them on. They got a lot of stories.
Well, I'm sure they do, but I'm sure there's a place to harvest some of them, or they could just give us some clips or whatever. But it's not like it costs you anything, You just maybe somebody finds you from us, and maybe they don't. I don't always know. There's other things we know really well, oddly enough. Before we wrap this up, how does one in their neighborhood think about? Does my school have a program? Do you have an answer to just universally in 3 minutes or less say something that we could use as a promo that might direct people to look for that in their neighborhood?
Yeah, I would just jump on the internet. And in fact, I had a student that just recently moved down to Vallejo, and she did the Yosemite trip with us last year. And she said, I am so bummed that I can't go back this year. is there any way I can join you guys? I said, well, unfortunately, no, because you're not a student anymore at our school. But I spent just a few minutes doing some research, and I sent her a few ideas. They had some youth programs, and it may have not been exactly what she wanted, but get your foot in the door. There was a area that you could go take care of animals, and that's where you start meeting people, though, that just work, ask people what they've done. The social media is a double-edged sword, because I've noticed so many more people in some of these amazing hidden areas that aren't hidden anymore.
Right.
And so there's a lot of stuff that people can find on social media, but I think just networking and connecting with somebody who gets outdoors. We're really fortunate that my administration invested in me to teach this outdoor adventure program. It's not at every school. Our trip to Yosemite, we're the only school in the district out of 6 that's grandfathered into that, because we've been doing it since the 70s. But there may be clubs for people in the area. There's definitely a lot of hiking clubs out there. If people are interested in anything, rock climbing, canoeing, kayaking, mountain biking. I mean, there's definitely so many people out there that have little clubs. That's another great spot to get connected and just do a little bit of research. It's out there.
And of course, what scouting troop are you? Can you say that on the air?
Oh my gosh. Well, a long story I won't tell you. For 56 years, we were Troop 828. We had a casualty where pretty much one individual submarined that. And so it's now Troop 417. So that was the day that Troop 828 was shuttered, was April 17th. So it's 417. Their little logo is a phoenix, because they rose from the ashes. And then I'm involved with Crew. Crew's more high adventure, older scouts, and Crew 777, both here in Roseville.
Okay, so Crew, for the benefit of some others, might be the old term we called explorers.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. That's what technically I was a Sea Scout until one day I woke up and I was a Sea Explorer. I didn't understand it, but they sent a whole bunch of new information, and we went out and bought new material and metals and all that stuff to make sure everybody knew who we were. We just kept on going. But it's a little different today. But you talk about the internet, but like we always said, yeah, you gotta learn, you gotta go, you gotta start. You just gotta.
Yeah. Hey, let me throw one more thing at you too. If you're an adult with kids, like, invest. I'm gonna use the word sickened by disheartened by how many adults don't invest with their own child's upbringing. Again, I've been part of scouting for almost 20 years. I got involved because I had 2 boys and I wanted them to do something outdoors. And I wanted to be, part of their journey. They definitely walk their own trails. I don't micromanage your kids, turn them loose. But it was like pulling teeth to get parents to come out and participate. I just do not understand that. So if your child is in sports, get out and be an assistant coach, or get them snacks after the game. If your kiddo is in high school or elementary school, volunteer for the PTC. Get involved. And so I think that's the best advice I could give to any adults with kids. I don't care how young or how old they are. My daughter is almost 21, and she says, "Dad, we have a freakishly good relationship with you and Mom." And I think that's just because as a family unit, we did so many things together outdoors, and my wife and I have invested. And so that's just, to experience things in the outdoors by yourself is one thing. That's pretty awesome. To experience it through the eyes of your child or your students, that's an extra bonus to be able to do that.
Well, this has been awesome. You've brought some great points for people to think about. I think that's a lot of what's lacking, is people just getting out and adventuring at whatever level they're at. It doesn't have to be hiking up some crazy mountain. You just need to get out and do some walking, or find a new place to hang out in, open your mind, expand your mind, experience something new. So Thank you very, very much.
I mean,
All
it's
right.
been fun.
Yeah. And if people want to follow you on social media and get the bug for adventure, where can they
Sure.
find you?
So it's Brent Mattix. You can see my name there. I pretty much just post on Facebook. Uh, you know, I don't go back and forth with a lot of stuff. I pretty much just put my stuff out there, and y'all see comments and reply every once in a while. But I'm out there doing, so I'm not big on following people back or checking their stuff out. I feel guilty for that. But they can drop in and go back through years of summers. And I mean, there's just so many cool things that I've had the pleasure of experiencing and seeing. And so they can check that out anytime.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Don't hang up. But we have to go make our time limit. So we really appreciate your stories, and we will be presenting those and probably robbing your Facebook page for a good picture.
There's a lot of neat, weird, cool stuff. So
Perfect. That's
uh,
us.
check it out. And thanks for
Okay.
having me, because I appreciate your time, and I love that you guys have the spirit to get people outdoors and adventuring. So keep that up.
Okay.
All right.